Kick back. Relax. It's time for the Unconventional Ufologist.
Hi there, my name's Steve, also known as the Unconventional Ufologist. Welcome to this latest episode, which is entitled The Unbelievable, Utterly Implausible and Probably Non-Existent Case of Majestic 12. So let's begin. In the beginning, there was a weather balloon. Or was it? Let us begin at the beginning, which is always a good place to start unless you're writing a story in reverse, in which case you should probably end at the end. In the summer of 1947, in a dusty corner of New Mexico known as Roswell, something fell from the sky. It wasn't a bird, it wasn't a plane. It wasn't even, as some optimists had hoped, a very confused weather balloon with a grudge. No, this was something far stranger. The US Air Forces, in their infinite wisdom and occasional lack of clarity, issued a press release stating they had recovered a flying disc. This was, of course, a phrase so loaded with implications it could have been used to power an underground secret time travel facility. A flying disc? Not a saucer, though that would come later thanks to over-enthusiastic journalism, but a disc. As if the heavens had opened up and dropped a particularly advanced vinyl record from a civilization that really likes ambient space jazz. Within hours, the press release was retracted. The flying disc, it turned out, was just a weather balloon. Not even a cool one. Not one that played music or had blinking lights. Just a regular weather balloon, the kind that measures atmospheric conditions and occasionally gets mistaken for alien technology by people who haven't had enough coffee. But here's where things get weird. Not aliens are among us weird, more like someone forgot to pay the admin who was supposed to proofread the memo weird. Because in the decades that followed, a story began to circulate. Not a loud story, not the kind that appears on the evening news with dramatic music and slow motion reenactments. No, this was a whisper, a rumour, a conspiracy theory so elaborate it made the plot of a badly written spy novel look like a grocery list. It was the story of Majestic 12, or MJ12 as it was sometimes called, because people love acronyms almost as much as they love pretending to be in charge of secret government operations. According to this story, the Roswell incident wasn't just a misunderstood weather balloon, it was the first confirmed recovery of an extraterrestrial spacecraft. And the US government didn't just cover it up, they formed a secret committee to manage the aftermath, study the wreckage, interrogate the little green, or possibly grey men, and make sure nobody, and I mean nobody, found out. And thus Majestic 12 was allegedly born. Not in fire, not in light, not even in a dramatic Oval Office meeting with thunder crashing in the background. No, it was allegedly born in a memo. A single, unassuming piece of paper, dated September the 24th, 1947, and signed by President Harry S. Truman. This appointed 12 of the most powerful, intelligent, and suspiciously deceased by the 1980s people in America to a top-secret extraterrestrial management task force. Which, when you think about it, is the kind of thing you'd expect to be written in visible ink, stored in a vault guarded by laser-equipped sharks, and only discussed in code over encrypted payphones. Instead, it showed up in the 1980s on a roll of film mailed anonymously to a UFO researcher. Because of course it did. Now, any good secret committee needs members. Not just any members, mind you. You can't just throw together a few guys from accounting and call it a day. No, if you're going to run a clandestine operation involving alien spacecraft, interstellar diplomacy, and possibly the fate of human civilization, you need elite people. People with titles, people with medals, people who look good in black and white photographs with serious expressions. And so, according to the documents that allegedly exist, but probably don't, Majestic 12 consisted of 12 individuals, each selected for their unique blend of expertise, influence and ability to keep a secret, presumably by being dead when the documents surfaced. So, let's meet the team. First up, Admiral Roscoe H. Hillenkotter, the first director of the CIA, a man so serious he probably frowned in his sleep. His job? Allegedly overseeing the intelligence side of the whole alien thing, which is ironic because after leaving the CIA, he joined a UFO research group and publicly advocated for disclosure. Either he was a brilliant double agent or he forgot he was supposed to be covering it up. Then there's Dr. Vannevar Bush, a man who sounds like he should be a character in a steampunk novel. He was the architect of the Manhattan Project, the man who coordinated America's scientific war effort during World War II, and a pioneer in early computing. In the MJ-12 mythos, he was put in charge of reverse engineering alien technology, which makes perfect sense. After building the atomic bomb, why not try to figure out how to make a spaceship that runs on thoughts and newly found off-world tech? James Forrestal, the first Secretary of Defence, was another member. He was a powerful man with a tragic end. Found dead in 1949 after falling from a hospital window. The official cause? Suicide. The conspiracy theory cause? He knew too much about aliens and had to be silenced. This is a recurring theme in UFO lore. If a high-ranking official dies mysteriously, it's probably because of little green men, not say depression or bad luck. Just a heads up though, we will be covering Forrestal's death, along with others in a later episode, because there is some contentious evidence surrounding their deaths. General Nathan F. Twining was an Air Force commander who once wrote a memo saying UFOs were something real and not visionary or fictitious. This naturally makes him the perfect candidate to leave the cover-up. Nothing says trustworthy like a general who publicly acknowledges UFO exists but then spends the rest of his career pretending they don't. General Hoyt S. Vandenberg, Chief of Staff of the Air Force, rounded out the military side. He rejected an initial government estimate that UFOs were of extraterrestrial origin and that conventional explanations for the sightings could be found. This shaped Project Blue Book's directives as it evolved from Project Sign and Grudge, which spent years collecting reports and then concluding over and over again that nothing was going on. And if that's not the hallmark of a secret alien task force, what is? Then, over on the science side, we have Dr. Detlef Bronk, a biophysicist who studied human physiology. His role? Probably dissecting alien corpses and wondering if they had the same hang-ups about cholesterol. Dr. Jerome Hunsaker, an aeronautics expert from MIT. He was likely tasked with figuring out how the alien ships flew. Given that they appear to defy known physics, this may have involved a lot of staring at diagrams, rubbing his chin, muttering, and eventually just copying the design without actually understanding it. Rear Admiral Sidney W. Sowers, the first Director of Central Intelligence, was another intelligence veteran. His inclusion suggests that MJ-12 wasn't just about science, it was about control, information control, narrative control, the kind of control that makes people believe weather balloons are flying saucers and flying saucers are weather balloons. Gordon Gray, a national security advisor, brought psychological strategy to the table. In other words, he was probably in charge of making sure the public didn't panic when they realised the sky was full of things they couldn't understand. And then, in a move of either genius or absurdity, they included Dr. Donald Menzel, a Harvard astronomer who spent his career debunking UFO sightings. Yes, the man who wrote books explaining away every alien encounter as atmospheric phenomena or overactive imaginations was allegedly part of the team managing those encounters. It's like hiring a vegan to run a steakhouse. Either the best person for the job or it's a very elaborate joke. Rounding out the list, General Robert M. Montague, who handled atomic weapons, and Dr. Lloyd V. Berkner, a geophysicist who studied radar and the ionosphere. Their roles? Likely ensuring that alien tech didn't interfere with nuclear missiles and that any signals from space weren't mistaken for Soviet propaganda. Put them all together and you have a group of people so powerful, so influential, and so conveniently dead by the time the documents appeared that no one could say, "Hey, hang on a minute, I don't remember signing up for this." Which, when you think about it, is the perfect setup for a hoax. So now let's talk about the documents, because none of this would matter if someone hadn't found a bunch of papers claiming it was all true. In 1984, ufologist Hamish Sandera received a roll of film in the mail. No return address, no note, just film, which in the world of UFO research is basically the equivalent of finding a treasure map in a bottle washed up on the shore. When developed, the film contained a series of government-style memos, including the now famous Truman-Forrestal memo dated September 24, 1947, authorising the creation of Operation Majestic 12. It was written in that stiff, bureaucratic tone that makes you feel like you're reading a form that you forgot to sign. It mentioned the Roswell crash. It mentioned the need for secrecy. It mentioned the formation of a 12-member committee. It was, in short, exactly what a real secret government document should look like if you were writing a novel. But here's the problem. It wasn't real. Well, at least that's what the FBI said. When copies of the documents were sent to the FBI in 1988, they launched an investigation. The Air Force got involved. Experts analysed the paper, the formatting, the signatures, and what did they find? They found mismatched typefaces, they found signatures that were photocopies of signatures from other documents, they found dates that didn't line up with known travel records. For example, Robert Cutler, one half of the infamous Cutler-Twining memo, was supposedly signing a memo while he was out of the country. In short, they found all the hallmarks of a forgery. The FBI concluded the documents were completely bogus.
No way.
Which in government speak means someone made this up and they weren't very good at it. But here's the twist. Despite the debunking, the documents didn't disappear. They spread. They were cited in books. They were featured in documentaries. They became the foundation of an entire subculture of UFO enthusiasts who insisted, against all evidence, that MJ12 was real. Why? Because sometimes a good story is more important than the truth. And this was a very, very good story. Now here's where it gets even weirder. Because while most experts agree the MJ12 documents are fake, there's a school of thought that suggests they might have been intentionally fake. Yep, you heard that right. Some people believe the US government let the hoax happen, or even encouraged it, as a way to mislead foreign intelligence agencies, as a way to discredit serious UFO researchers, as a way to hide real secrets behind a wall of absurdity. It's a classic spy trick. Hide the truth in plain sight by making it look ridiculous. Imagine you're running a secret program to study alien technology. You can't tell anyone, but you also can't let your enemies know how much you know. So you leak fake documents, wild, over the top, slightly off in details, knowing that when the real researchers find them, they'll be dismissed as conspiracy theories. And that's exactly what happened. The MJ12 documents are just off enough to be suspicious. The formatting is wrong, the language is a bit too dramatic, the list of members is so perfectly curated it feels like a Hollywood casting call. And yet, they contain just enough truth, real names, real positions, real events like Roswell, to feel plausible. It's possible, just possible, that someone in the intelligence community said, you know what, let's create a fake UFO committee, make it sound real, leak it, and then when people talk about MJ12, we'll laugh and say, can you believe anyone falls for that? Meanwhile, the real programme continues in silence. This idea gained traction when ufologist Bill Moore, one of the early promoters of the MJ12 story, admitted he had considered creating a hoax to provoke a government response. He claimed he didn't make the documents, but the fact that he was thinking about it suggests the environment was ripe for deception. And let's be honest, if you're going to run a secret alien program, wouldn't you want a decoy? Something to point to when people ask too many questions, something that sounds so insane that no one will believe it, except the people who believe everything. MJ12 might not be real, but it might be the perfect smokescreen. And for more on Bill Moore, have a listen to the Moore vs Elizondo episode, which is episode 1 in the list. Anyway, let's play a game, a thought experiment. What if the MJ12 documents were real? What if on September the 24th, 1947, President Truman really did sign an executive order creating a secret committee to handle extraterrestrial contact? What would that mean? Well, for starters, it would mean we've been lied to, not just about Roswell, not just about UFOs, but about the entire trajectory of 20th century science and technology. Because if we've been reverse engineering alien tech since 1947, then things like transistors, fibre optics, stealth aircraft, and even the internet might not be the result of human genius. They might be knockoffs, cheap Earth-made versions of technology we found in a crashed spaceship. Imagine that! Earth is this galaxy's Temu. Every time you use a smartphone, you're holding a pale imitation of a device that runs on zero-point energy and communicates via quantum entanglement. Every time a plane flies silently overhead, it might not be a drone, it might be a test model based on alien propulsion systems. The Cold War space race, not a competition between superpowers, more like a scavenger hunt to see who could recover the most alien wreckage. And James Forrestal's death, not a suicide, a silencing, because he wanted to tell the truth. And the truth, as they say, is out there. But so is misinformation, poor handwriting, and the tendency of humans to believe stories that confirm their suspicions. Still, let's keep pretending, because pretending is fun. If MJ12 were real, it would mean there's a shadow government, a group so powerful it operates outside the Constitution, beyond presidential oversight, answering only to itself. It would mean that every time a president asked, "Are there aliens?" they were told, "No sir," while a dozen men in a bunker somewhere laughed into their coffee. It would mean that breakthroughs in medicine, energy and physics have been suppressed, not because they don't work, but because they might disrupt the economy, the military, or the delicate balance of global power. It would mean that contact has already happened, and we just don't know about it, because somebody decided we weren't ready, or because somebody decided they'd rather keep the technology for themselves. Even if MJ12 never existed, it has certainly lived. It's lived in books, in documentaries, in podcasts just like this one. It's lived in the X-Files where shadowy government figures whisper about the Syndicate and alien colonisation. It has lived in Deus Ex, a video game where a secret group uses alien nanotechnology to control the world and accidentally creates a global pandemic called the Grey Death. It has lived in Delta Green, a tabletop RPG where agents fight cosmic horrors while being hunted down by their own government. It has lived in the minds of people who look at the sky and say, "There's no way we're alone." And in a way, that's more powerful than reality, because MJ12 isn't just a conspiracy theory, it's a myth. A modern myth, dressed in the language of government memos and classified files, but rooted in the same human fears and hopes that gave us gods, monsters and heroes. It's the story of what happens when we discover we're not alone, and what those in power do when they find out first. It's a story about secrecy, about trust, about the gap between what we're told and what might be true. And as long as that gap exists, MJ12 will live, even if it never did. Now fast forward to this year. UFOs, now rebranded as UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena, because nothing says we're serious like changing a name, are back in news. Pentagon reports, congressional hearings, Navy pilots describing tic-tac shaped objects moving at impossible speeds, and with them, the whispers return. MJ12, not a literal committee, not as a group of 12 dead men from the 1940s, but as a symbol of what might be hidden. Some people claim that MJ12 still exists under a different name, that it changes its code name every few years to avoid detection, and that it's now called Immaculate Constellation, or Garnet, or Seraphim, or any of the other delightfully dramatic names that sound like rejected Marvel movie titles. There are stories, unverified of course, such as Project Serpo, about human-alien exchanges, about 12 US personnel being sent to a planet in the Zeta Reticuli system in the 1960s, about secret bases under the desert, about portals, interdimensional beings, and the harvesting of human emotional energy. Yes, really, some people call it loosh, which sounds like a rejected breakfast cereal. Are any of these true? Probably not, but they do persist. Because the idea of a secret group controlling the truth about aliens is more comforting, in a strange way, than the alternative. The alternative being maybe there are no aliens, maybe the government isn't hiding anything, maybe the universe is vast, indifferent and silent, and that's a much scarier thought. As Arthur C. Clarke once said, two possibilities exist, either we are alone in the universe or we are not, both are equally terrifying. Now, let's talk about the man who may or may not have orchestrated one of the most elaborate, long-running and psychologically intricate games of smoke and mirrors in modern American history. His name is Richard Doty, but you might know him better as Falcon. Not the Marvel superhero, not the bird of prey, not even the guy you used to talk to on the CB back in the 80s. No, this Falcon was an operative, an intelligence officer, a whisperer in the dark. A man, if you believe the right people, or the wrong ones depending on your perspective, didn't just participate in the MJ12 mythos, he may have designed it. and not as a whistleblower, as a disinformation agent. Richard Doty was a special agent with the US Air Force Office of Special Investigations, or OSI, the military's version of a detective agency but with more aviator sunglasses and fewer donuts. His official job, investigating espionage, sabotage and security threats. His unofficial job, according to multiple whistleblowers, researchers and former associates, managing the flow of UFO-related misinformation to prevent the truth from leaking, or more accurately, to make sure the wrong truth leaked. And what better way to hide a secret than to flood the zone with lies? Enter Doty. In the late 1980s, just as the MJ-12 documents were beginning to circulate, Doty appeared on the UFO scene like a character from a spy novel written by someone who'd had too much caffeine and not enough sleep. He made contact with prominent UFO researchers, men like Paul Bennewitz, a physicist and amateur ufologist in Albuquerque who was conducting his own radar experiments and claiming to intercept alien signals from nearby Kirtland Air Force Base. Doty didn't just talk to Bennewitz, he befriended him. He fed him documents, he confirmed his wildest theories, he told him the Air Force was in contact with extraterrestrials, he told him the aliens were conducting hybrid breeding programs, he told him the government had underground bases, and he told him, crucially, that Majestic 12 was real. And then, as Bennewitz spiralled deeper into obsession, Doty reportedly handed him forged documents, false telemetry data and fictional communications, all designed to make Bennewitz believe he was uncovering the truth, when in fact he was being led down a rabbit hole of bureaucratic hallucination. Eventually Bennewitz suffered a complete mental breakdown. He was hospitalised, he became convinced he was being psychically attacked by aliens. He stopped working, he lost his business, and he spent years in and out of psychiatric care. And when investigators later looked into what had happened, they found a trail, and at the end of that trail, Richard Doty. The story of Doty and Bennewitz isn't just a cautionary tale about obsession, it's a case study in psychological operations. And according to researchers like Dolores Cannon, Timothy Good and William L. Moore, yes, the same Moore who helped publicise the MJ-12 documents, Doty wasn't just improvising. He was running a programme possibly sanctioned by higher authorities, designed to discredit serious UFO research by feeding false information to credible investigators. This operation, sometimes referred to as Operation Trojan Horse, had a clear objective: make the truth so indistinguishable from fiction that no one would believe either. Think about it. If you're part of a secret programme studying alien technology, you don't want the public to know, but you can't stop them from investigating either. So instead of denying everything, which draws attention, you do the opposite. You confirm the wildest stories, you leak fake documents, you create fictional characters, you invent alien races with names like Zeta Reticulans and Reptilians, you talk about underground bases under Dulce, New Mexico, you mention hybrid children, you whisper about MJ-12, and then, when someone comes forward with all this information, the official response is simple: that's insane. Clearly this person has been misled by a conspiracy theorist. Nothing to see here. It's not denial. It's overconfirmation, and it's devastatingly effective. Now here's the million-dollar question: did Richard Doty forge the MJ-12 documents? The short answer: probably not with his own hands. The longer answer: he may have been the puppet master who made sure they appeared at exactly the right time, in exactly the right places, with exactly the right people. Consider the timeline. 1984, Hamish Andera receives the MJ-12 film roll in the mail, anonymously, no return address. 1985, the documents begin circulating around UFO researchers. 1987, British researcher Timothy Good claims to have obtained related files. 1988, the FBI investigates and declares the documents completely bogus. And throughout this period, Richard Doty is actively involved in the UFO research community. He's feeding Paul Bennewitz false data, he's meeting with other investigators, he's confirming the existence of MJ-12, he's even, according to some accounts, admitting he's part of the disinformation programme. Yes, really. In a now famous interview with ufologist Linda Moulton Howe, Doty reportedly said, "Yes, we do disinformation, that's part of my job." When asked if he had ever lied to UFO researchers, he just smiled and said, "Would I tell you if I had?" Which, as last words go, is both chilling and oddly polite. Perhaps the most damning piece of evidence linking Doty to the MJ-12 mythos is the so-called Falcon memo. Dated February the 28th, 1985, and addressed to Mr. X, it reads like a spy novel written by somebody who really wanted to get caught. It begins, "This will confirm our recent discussion concerning the ongoing disinformation programme." And then, in chillingly bureaucratic language, it outlines a plan to feed false UFO data to selected researchers, use psychic channels to spread misinformation, confirm the existence of MJ12 as a way to neutralise serious investigations, and create fictional alien races and hybrid programs to distract from real projects. And the memo is signed Falcon. Now here's the thing, the Falcon memo has never been authenticated. The FBI say it's a forgery, the Air Force denies it exists, and yet its content matches exactly what multiple whistleblowers have claimed. It predicts the rise of MJ12 as a cultural phenomenon. It describes tactics that were in fact used, and most disturbingly, it was sent to William L. Moore, the same man who helped publicise the MJ12 documents. Moore later admitted he had considered creating a hoax to provoke a government response. But was he a creator? Or was he too a target? Was he handed the M12 documents by someone like Doty, knowing Moore would publish them, thus launching 1,000 conspiracy theories and burying the truth under a mountain of absurdity? It's possible. In fact, it's probable. Because if you were running a disinformation campaign, you wouldn't hand fake documents to a random blogger. You'd hand them to somebody credible, someone with connections, someone who would make the story go viral decades before viral was a thing. And William Moore was exactly that. So what happened to Richard Doty? He retired from the Air Force, he disappeared from public view, he never stood trial, he never confessed, and to this day he remains, well, a semi-shadow figure quoted in documentaries, named in books, whispered about in UFO circles like a ghost who never quite left the building. But his legacy, it's everywhere. Because thanks to Doty, or someone like him, the line between truth and fiction in UFO research has never been thinner, and unbelievably, he's been given his own TV show where we're led to believe that he's actually giving real facts about MJ12, alien autopsies, hybrid children, underground bases, interdimensional beings. All of it sounds just plausible enough to believe and just ridiculous enough to dismiss, which is of course the point. As one former intelligence officer reportedly said, the best way to hide a secret is not to deny it, it's to make sure everyone who talks about it sounds crazy. And Doty, he may have been the man who perfected that art. Now let's step back for a moment, forget the documents, forget the memos, forget the names and dates and alleged crash sites, think about what Doty's alleged actions mean. They mean that the truth about UFOs, if it exists, might not be hidden in a vault. It might be hidden in noise, in a carefully constructed ecosystem of half-truths, exaggerations and outright fabrications designed to make the real information unbelievable. It means that whistleblowers might be telling the truth, but their stories are so bizarre they're dismissed as fantasy. It means that journalists might be reporting facts, but those facts are buried under layers of myth. It means the government might not be lying, it might just be letting the liars do the work for them. And in that world, Richard Doty isn't a villain, he's a strategist, a tactician, a man who understood that in the age of information, the most powerful weapon isn't secrecy, it's confusion. And if MJ12 was never real, then Doty may have created the perfect decoy, a committee so perfectly cast, so plausibly structured, so rich in detail that it had to be true, even though it wasn't, even though it couldn't be, even though the only thing real about it was the effect it had on the people who believed it. Now there's a story, possibly apocryphal, that in the late 1990s a UFO researcher tracked down Richard Doty at a diner in New Mexico. They sat across from each other and the researcher asked, "Did you create MJ12? Doty reportedly took a sup of his coffee, looked out of the window and said, "Let's just say I helped it along." And then he smiled, paid the bill and walked out. And if that story is true, then everything changes, because it means that Majestic 12 was never a secret government committee. It was a legend, a myth, a story so powerful it could shape reality. And Richard Doty, he wasn't a member, he was the author. After all this, the documents, the debunking, the theories, the cultural impact, what can we say about Majestic 12? We can say this: There's no verifiable evidence that MJ12 ever existed. The documents are almost certainly forgeries. The members were real people, but there's no proof they were involved in any secret alien program. The FBI say it's a hoax. The National Archives have no record of it. Doty has practically admitted it was a disinformation tool. And yet, the story endures. Because really, MJ12 isn't about aliens. It's about us. It's about our distrust of power, our fascination with the unknown, our desire to believe that there's more to the world than what we're told. It's about the comfort of a conspiracy. If someone's in control, even if it's a shadowy cabal of dead scientists, then the universe makes sense. Chaos is frightening. A secret plan, even a terrifying one, is better than no plan at all. So MJ12 lives. Not in files, not in bunkers, not in Area 51, but in the stories we tell, in the questions we ask, in the quiet moment when we look up at the night sky and wonder, what if? And really, isn't that enough? What do you think? Because in the end, that's all any of us can do. Think, wonder, and maybe, just maybe, laugh at the sheer absurdity of it all. After all, as any reasonable person might say, if the government was really hiding aliens, do you really think they'd leave it in a memo signed by Truman? Probably not. But wouldn't that be something? My name's Steve, the Unconventional Ufologist. Thanks for listening. Head on over to that Unconventional Ufologist Facebook page and leave your thoughts about MJ12. And while you're there, why not join our little community? So until next time, take care and remember, keep watching the skies.